Girl receives a mysterious Christmas gift from someone she doesn't know. When the mysterious sender reveals himself, the girl can't hold back her tears. December had draped the city of Burlington, Vermont, in a pristine blanket of snow, as if the world itself had taken a moment to hold its breath in awe of the holiday season. For 19-year-old Ellie Harper, this time of year was bittersweet. With her parents gone on a medical research trip to South Africa, her holiday plans revolved around quiet nights and distant phone calls. It was the morning of December 20th when Ellie found the package on her front porch. The small box, wrapped in red and gold foil, was adorned with an elegant silver bow. There was no return address, no sender information, only her name written in delicate calligraphy on a cream-colored tag. To Ellie, curiosity piqued. Ellie brought it inside, her breath visible in the chilly air. She placed the box on the dining table, its vibrant wrapping a stark contrast to the rustic wooden surface. Her fingers trembled slightly as she untied the ribbon and carefully removed the paper. Inside was a handcrafted snow globe. The scene within depicted a cozy cabin surrounded by snow-covered pine trees, a warm glow emanating from its tiny windows. As Ellie shook the globe, soft glitter swirled inside, creating a magical storm of gold and white. She noticed an inscription at the base, carved in neat, blocky letters. "For all the warmth you bring to the world." Ellie's heart quickened. Who could have sent this? She had no admirers, no secret friends. And why this particular gift? The rest of her day was consumed by the mystery of the snow globe. She texted her closest friends, Sarah and Liam, but neither claimed responsibility. Even her parents, when she called them later that evening, were as baffled as she was. "Maybe someone sees you as a Christmas miracle," her father had teased, chuckling warmly. Ellie rolled her eyes but couldn't suppress her growing curiosity. That night, she placed the snow globe on her nightstand. The soft golden light from her lamp reflected off the glitter, casting a warm, comforting glow across her room. For the first time in weeks, Ellie felt a sense of peace, as though she weren't entirely alone. Yet, as she drifted to sleep, a thought tugged at the edges of her mind. Who knew her well enough to send such a meaningful gift, and why hadn't they revealed themselves? The mystery deepened the next morning. As Ellie stepped outside to fetch the newspaper, she noticed a small envelope tucked beneath the globe on her porch. Inside was a note written on crisp parchment, the ink flowing in the same elegant script as before. "Sometimes the best gifts come from those we least expect. Keep believing." Ellie felt a shiver, not from the cold but from the eeriness of it all. Whoever this sender was, they knew her habits and her address, and they seemed to understand her heart more intimately than she cared to admit. But she resolved not to let fear overtake the enchantment of the gesture. Burlington, with its close-knit community, had a way of bringing people together in ways Ellie hadn't yet understood. And maybe, just maybe, the answer to this puzzle would reveal itself, wrapped in something even more surprising than she could imagine. As the snow fell heavier that evening, Ellie decided to keep the globe on her bedside table once more. Little did she know, the sender's intentions went beyond mere holiday cheer. Each snowflake outside her window seemed to whisper of miracles yet to unfold, carrying her toward a revelation that would change her life forever. The days crept closer to Christmas, and Ellie's routine grew laced with quiet anticipation. Each morning, she checked the porch for another note or gift, but none came. Still, the mystery of the snow globe lingered like a sweet aftertaste, filling her thoughts as she wandered through the modest downtown shops and sipped hot cocoa at her favorite cafe. On Christmas Eve morning, the stillness was broken. Ellie awoke to the soft hum of carols drifting from the radio she always left on overnight. As her eyes adjusted to the light, her heart skipped. A small velvet box sat beside the snow globe on her nightstand. She blinked, unsure how it had gotten there. She was certain she had locked her doors and windows the night before. A chill raced down her spine, but it quickly gave way to curiosity. Swallowing her unease, Ellie opened the box. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet, its chain adorned with a single charm, a snowflake encrusted with tiny crystals that sparkled like stars. Her pulse quickened. This was no random act of kindness. The craftsmanship of the bracelet spoke of intentionality, of someone who knew her well enough to understand the simplicity she adored. But who? The thought gnawed at her as she dressed and headed into town to pick up groceries for her small Christmas dinner. The streets of Burlington buzzed with the festive energy of last-minute shoppers. Lights blinked from every window, and children's laughter rang through the frosty air. At the corner bakery, Ellie stood in line, her basket filled with cranberry scones and candied pecans. "Ellie!" She turned to see Sarah rushing toward her, wrapped in a bright green scarf that clashed cheerfully with her auburn hair. "Sarah, what are you doing here? I thought you were spending Christmas with your family in Boston." "We got snowed in," Sarah replied, grinning, "which means I get to bother you instead." "How's the Christmas prep going?" Ellie hesitated. Should she tell Sarah about the gifts? The question must have shown on her face because Sarah tilted her head. "What's up?" she asked, lowering her voice. "You look like you've got a secret." Ellie laughed nervously, deciding it was too strange to keep to herself any longer. "Okay, but you have to promise not to freak out." As they sat at a nearby cafe, Ellie recounted everything. The snow globe, the bracelet, the mysterious notes. Sarah's eyes grew wide, her excitement palpable. "That's incredible. It's so romantic," she gushed. "You have a secret admirer. Maybe it's someone you see every day but never noticed, like the barista at the coffee shop or that guy at the bookstore." "Sarah," Ellie said, rolling her eyes, "this isn't a rom-com, it's unnerving." "Unnerving?" Sarah leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Ellie, someone is paying attention to you. Someone cares enough to do something thoughtful. It's not unnerving, it's sweet. Besides, you deserve it." Ellie felt a wave of warmth at her friend's words, but the unease lingered. Sarah could call it romantic all she wanted, but Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that the gifts were more than random acts of affection. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the sky filled with a soft indigo glow, Ellie returned home. Her tiny apartment seemed especially quiet, the air thick with expectancy. She couldn't explain it, but it was as if the snow globe itself was waiting. She moved it to her kitchen counter, running her fingers over the inscription. "For all the warmth you bring to the world." The words felt heavier now, as though they carried a promise she wasn't sure she could fulfill. As Ellie prepared for bed, the sharp sound of a knock at her door startled her. She froze, her breath catching in her throat. No one ever came by unannounced, especially not this late. Grabbing a nearby umbrella as a makeshift weapon, Ellie approached the door cautiously. "Who is it?" she called out, her voice steadier than she felt. Silence. Heart pounding, Ellie cracked the door open just enough to peer outside. On her porch sat another package, this one wrapped in simple brown paper. She glanced around, but the street was empty, cloaked in the stillness of freshly fallen snow. Swallowing her fear, Ellie brought the package inside and unwrapped it. Beneath the paper was a book, an old leather-bound volume titled The Winter's Tale. She opened the cover and found a handwritten note tucked inside. The answers lie in the pages. Sometimes the story we're searching for isn't written for us, but about us. Ellie's hands trembled as she traced the elegant script. The sender wasn't just leaving gifts. They were trying to tell her something. She flipped through the book, the faint smell of aged paper filling the air. Tucked between the last pages was a photograph. It was of a young girl, no older than 5, sitting in a field of daisies. Her wide smile and bright eyes were achingly familiar. Ellie's breath hitched. It was her. Her world tilted, the room spinning as questions collided in her mind. How did they have this photo? Who could know her so intimately, and why did they want her to believe? For the first time, Ellie wasn't sure if she was part of a beautiful mystery or an unsettling revelation that would upend everything she thought she knew. Ellie stared at the photograph, her mind racing. She recognized the field, an expanse of wildflowers on the outskirts of her grandparents' property in Maine. That summer had been magical, filled with carefree laughter and the comforting presence of her grandmother. The memory was bittersweet. Her grandparents had passed years ago, and the house was sold shortly after. Whoever had sent this knew not just about her life now but her past as well. The thought made her feel both seen and exposed. Clutching the book, Ellie paced her small living room, her thoughts spiraling. She picked up her phone and called Sarah. "Hey," Sarah answered, her voice groggy. "It's late. What's wrong?" Ellie's words spilled out in a rush. She told her about the book, the photo, and the cryptic note. "That's really specific," Sarah said, her voice waking with interest. "The photo, Ellie. How would anyone else have that?" "That's what I can't figure out," Ellie replied, her voice trembling. "It's not like I've shared this picture online or anything. And that field. It's so far removed from my life now. Do you think it could be a family member?" Sarah asked. Ellie frowned, sinking into her couch. "If it were, they'd have just told me, wouldn't they? And why all the secrecy?" "Maybe they think this is the best way to reach you," Sarah suggested gently. The idea made sense, but it didn't sit right. Ellie's family wasn't one for elaborate gestures or enigmas. Her parents, pragmatic as ever, would have called her outright. And her extended family, well, she hardly spoke to them. "Should I go to the police?" Ellie asked hesitantly. Sarah hesitated. "Do you feel threatened?" Ellie shook her head, even though Sarah couldn't see her. "No, it's not that. It's just unsettling." "Then maybe just wait," Sarah advised. "See if they reveal themselves. Whoever this is, it feels like they're building up to something." Ellie sighed. She wanted to agree, but the weight of the mystery pressed on her chest. "Thanks, Sarah. I'll talk to you tomorrow." "Ellie, if you need anything, I'm here," Sarah said firmly before hanging up. That night, Ellie barely slept. The photograph remained on her nightstand, a tangible connection to her past and the questions now haunting her. When dawn broke, she decided she couldn't wait passively anymore. She bundled up and drove to the Burlington Public Library, the photograph and The Winter's Tale tucked into her bag. If there were clues in the book, she'd need to read it closely. The library was nearly empty, its warmth a sharp contrast to the icy streets outside. Ellie found a quiet corner and opened the book. Her eyes scanned the first few pages, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the photograph. She pulled it out, her fingers tracing the image. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" Ellie looked up, startled. A man about her age stood before her, his kind eyes framed by wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a dark coat dusted with snowflakes. "No, go ahead," she said, sliding her things closer to give him space. "Thanks," he said, setting down a stack of books. As he sat, he glanced at the photo in Ellie's hand. "That's a beautiful shot." Ellie hesitated. There was nothing suspicious about him, but her paranoia had grown overnight. "Thanks," she murmured, tucking the photo back into the book. The man smiled politely and turned his attention to his own reading. Ellie tried to focus again, but her curiosity got the better of her. She cleared her throat. "Sorry to bother you," she began. "Do you know much about Shakespeare?" He looked up, his eyes lighting up. "A bit. I'm a literature student at UVM." "Why?" Ellie hesitated, then slid The Winter's Tale across the table. "I was given this recently, and I was told the answers I'm looking for are in the pages. But I'm not sure where to start." The man tilted his head, intrigued. "That's cryptic." The Winter's Tale is one of Shakespeare's later works. It's a mix of tragedy and comedy, kind of about second chances, redemption, and unexpected reunions. "What answers are you looking for?" Ellie bit her lip. She wasn't ready to explain everything. "Just personal ones," she said vaguely. He nodded, seeming to respect her privacy. "I'd focus on the themes of forgiveness and discovery," he suggested. "There's a lot about reconciling with the past." His words struck a chord, and Ellie felt a glimmer of clarity. Perhaps the gift wasn't just about the book's story, but about her own. That evening, Ellie returned home feeling lighter. The man's words lingered, giving her a sense of direction. She placed the book and photograph back on her nightstand and stared at the snow globe, its glitter swirling in the dim light. She whispered aloud to the empty room, "Who are you? And what do you want me to see?" As if in answer, a soft knock sounded at her door. Her heart leapt, and she rushed to the entryway. But when she opened the door, no one was there. only a small envelope resting on the mat. With trembling hands, Ellie picked it up and tore it open. Inside was a single sentence written in the same elegant script. "Look closer. There's always more than meets the eye." Ellie's gaze darted to the snow globe. She lifted it, examining it from every angle. Then she noticed something new. A small latch concealed at the base. Her breath caught as she flipped the latch and the bottom of the globe popped open. Inside was a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. She unfolded it carefully, her eyes scanning the faint handwriting. It was a letter, one addressed to her grandmother. And it was signed by someone Ellie had never heard of before, Arthur T. Merritt. Questions swirled faster than the glitter in the globe, pulling Ellie into a mystery that stretched far beyond her lifetime. Ellie's hands trembled as she held the fragile letter. The ink, though faded, was still legible, the handwriting elegant and deliberate. She read the first few lines, her heart racing. "Dearest Margaret, I hope this letter finds you in good health and spirits. Though we've been apart for many years, I often find my thoughts drifting to the summers in Maine. Margaret," her grandmother. The letter was personal, filled with nostalgic details about the wildflower field and warm evenings spent under the stars. Yet, one sentence stood out, searing itself into Ellie's mind. "Though I've never been able to speak of it, know that my gratitude for the warmth and kindness you showed me has shaped my life. I owe you more than words could express." Ellie sat down, the letter slipping from her fingers onto the table. Who was Arthur T. Merritt? And why would someone go to such lengths to bring this letter back to her family? The next morning, Ellie decided to follow the only lead she had: her grandmother's old home in Maine. She hadn't been there since she was a child, but the memories were vivid enough to guide her. The trip took nearly 5 hours. Snow flurries swirled as she drove along winding roads, the fields and forests of her childhood rushing past like ghosts from another time. When she finally arrived at the small coastal town, Ellie's heart ached at the sight of the familiar landmarks. The house itself stood much as she remembered it, though time had softened its once crisp edges. The current owners had maintained the pale blue paint and wooden shutters, but the garden her grandmother had adored now lay buried beneath a blanket of snow. Ellie parked a short distance away, reluctant to intrude on the new occupants. Instead, she wandered toward the wildflower field where the photo in the snow globe had been taken. The landscape was unrecognizable under the snow, but Ellie could almost see the vibrant daisies and feel the summer sun on her face. As she stood there, she noticed an older man approaching from a nearby trail. He wore a heavy coat and a scarf wrapped snugly around his neck. Though his steps were slow, there was a determination in his gait. "Are you lost?" he called out, his voice carrying easily across the frosty air. Ellie turned toward him. "No, just reminiscing," she said, her voice tinged with uncertainty. The man smiled faintly, his gray eyes thoughtful. "It's a good spot for that. I've spent many an afternoon here myself. Used to know the woman who lived in that house." He gestured toward her grandmother's old home. Ellie's pulse quickened. "You knew Margaret Harper?" His expression softened. "I did. She was a remarkable woman, kind to everyone she met." He paused, studying Ellie's face. "You're her granddaughter, aren't you?" Ellie blinked in surprise. "How did you know?" The man chuckled. "You look just like her when she was younger." Same determined eyes. Ellie felt a swell of emotion. "Did you know an Arthur Merritt?" she asked, watching closely for his reaction. His smile faded, replaced by a look of quiet sorrow. "I did," he said after a moment. "Arthur was my older brother." Ellie's breath caught. She gestured toward a nearby bench, and they sat down together as the man, introduced as Henry Merritt, shared his story. "Arthur and Margaret were close when they were young," Henry began. "He met her during a summer she spent here, helping out a local family. They bonded over books, music, and the kind of conversations you don't forget. But life took them in different directions." Henry sighed, his breath visible in the cold air. "Arthur moved away after the war, and though he tried to stay in touch, letters don't always make it through the years. But he never forgot your grandmother. Said she was one of the few people who truly understood him." Ellie showed him the letter, careful not to let the brittle paper tear. Henry read it, his hands steady despite the emotion that flickered in his eyes. "This was written not long before Arthur passed," Henry said quietly. "He'd always wanted to send it, but I suppose he didn't know how. After he died, I found it among his things. I meant to deliver it myself, but I never got the chance." Ellie's heart ached as she listened. "Do you know who could have sent it to me now?" Henry shook his head. "No, but it's clear someone wanted you to know the connection you share with him. And with your grandmother." That evening, Ellie returned to her hotel, her mind spinning with possibilities. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to form a picture, but the edges were still blurred. She felt an overwhelming need to honor Arthur's memory, but she didn't know how. As she sat by the window, staring at the snow-covered town, her phone buzzed with a message. It was from an unknown number. "Did you find what you were looking for?" Ellie's fingers hovered over the screen, her heart pounding. Whoever this was, they knew about her trip, and they were watching her every step. She hesitated, then typed back, "Who are you? Why are you doing this?" The reply came almost instantly. "Sometimes the past holds the key to what we need most in the present." "Look deeper." Ellie stared at the message, the words echoing in her mind. She wasn't just uncovering a story from her family's past. She was living it. Ellie barely slept that night, her thoughts tangled in the cryptic message and Henry's revelations. Who was guiding her along this journey, and why did it feel so deeply personal? The sender knew things no stranger could possibly know. As morning light seeped into her hotel room, Ellie resolved to act. She had come this far, and the only way to find the truth was to keep following the breadcrumbs. She texted Sarah, updating her on everything that had happened. Sarah's reply was immediate. "This is huge. Whoever they are, they're clearly invested in you finding something important. Maybe it's bigger than just the letter." Ellie sighed, her chest tightening. She knew Sarah was right. Her first stop that day was the town's public records office. The building was small but well organized, and a helpful clerk guided her to a file on the Merritt family. Arthur Merritt, she learned, had been a teacher, a lover of literature, and an active volunteer in the community. He had no children and had spent his final years alone after Henry moved to another state. Among the papers was a copy of Arthur's will. To her surprise, there was a note attached, a handwritten postscript addressed to Margaret Harper. To Margaret, "Should this ever reach you, I want you to know that the books we read and the letters we shared remain among my most treasured memories. Thank you for teaching me to believe in kindness and to see the beauty in the smallest moments." Ellie's throat tightened as she read the words. The tone of the note mirrored the snow globe's inscription. "For all the warmth you bring to the world." Arthur had clearly held onto his feelings for her grandmother. But the deeper question remained. Why was this connection being brought to her now? Her next destination was a small antique bookstore Henry had mentioned, a place Arthur used to frequent. The shop, page and lantern, smelled of old paper and wood polish, its shelves lined with volumes that bore the weight of countless stories. Ellie browsed aimlessly at first, running her fingers along the spines of books, until a soft voice interrupted her. "Can I help you?" She turned to find a young woman with curly hair and warm brown eyes standing behind the counter. Her name tag read Leah. "I'm looking for books or records connected to Arthur Merritt," Ellie explained. Leah's face lit up. "Arthur was a favorite of ours. He loved this place. He even donated a few rare books from his personal collection before he passed." Ellie's heart skipped. "Do you still have them?" Leah nodded and disappeared into the back room, returning with a small stack of books. Ellie's hands trembled as she sifted through them. The titles ranged from poetry to philosophy, but one in particular caught her attention: the collected poems of Emily Dickinson. Inside the cover, Arthur had written an inscription. "For those who see beauty in the fleeting, may these words be a reminder of all that endures." Tucked between the pages was a folded slip of paper. Ellie unfolded it to reveal a sketch, a simple drawing of a snow globe, almost identical to the one she had received. Her breath hitched. It was unmistakable now. Arthur's influence extended far beyond the letter. The snow globe and the messages were tied to his life story and, somehow, to hers. As Ellie left the bookstore, the weight of the discovery pressed against her chest. Snow began to fall in thick, soft flakes, muffling the sounds of the world around her. She was about to step into her car when her phone buzzed again. "You're closer than you think. Follow the light." Ellie stared at the screen, her hands shaking. She looked up at the darkening sky, the falling snow casting everything in muted shades of white and gray. In the distance, a single street lamp flickered against the gloom. Her instincts told her to follow it. The lamp led her to the edge of the wildflower field, now blanketed in snow. The sight was eerily beautiful, and Ellie felt a pang of nostalgia for the summers she had spent here with her grandmother. In the center of the field stood a figure, their back turned to her. They were wrapped in a long coat, their silhouette blurred by the snow. Ellie's breath caught. She hesitated for a moment before calling out, "Hello?" The figure turned slowly. It was Henry. "I thought I might find you here," he said, his voice gentle. "What are you doing out here?" Ellie asked, her confusion mounting. "I remembered something after we spoke yesterday," Henry said, taking a step closer. "Arthur used to talk about this field, about how it was a place where he felt connected to the people he loved most. I thought you might come back here, too." Ellie's heart ached at the thought. "Why now, Henry? Why is all of this happening now?" Henry hesitated, his expression thoughtful. "Perhaps because it's time." Arthur believed that love and kindness ripple outward, touching lives in ways we can't always see. Maybe someone out there felt it was time for his story, and your family's story, to come full circle. Ellie looked at him, her eyes brimming with tears. "Do you think he knew I'd be the one to find all of this?" Henry's lips curved into a faint smile. "Arthur always said that the right stories find the right people. And you, Ellie, you're part of that story now." As they stood together in the snow-covered field, Ellie felt a strange sense of peace settle over her. The mystery wasn't entirely solved, but the pieces were falling into place. She wasn't just uncovering the past, she was reclaiming it, and somehow, she knew the answers she sought would lead her to something more profound than she had ever imagined. The stillness of the field followed Ellie back to her hotel room. The snow globe now felt heavier in her hands, as if it carried the weight of Arthur's unsent words and the memories it held. Henry's words lingered too. "You're part of that story now." Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that she was being guided, not just by Arthur's legacy, but by someone with an intimate knowledge of her life. That thought sent a chill through her, not one of fear, but of urgency. Before bed, she carefully unfolded the letter from Arthur again. Her eyes scanned the handwriting, the details etched into each loop and line. Then she noticed something she hadn't before, a faint indentation on the back of the page. Grabbing a pencil, Ellie gently shaded over the back of the letter. Slowly, words emerged, their ghostly imprint forming a new message. "The key is where stories are kept safe." She stared at the message, her pulse quickening. The key, where stories are kept safe. The first place that came to mind was her grandmother's old library. The next morning, Ellie left her hotel early and drove to the house where her grandmother had lived. The new owners weren't home, so Ellie lingered by the fence, gazing at the windows. The library had been her grandmother's sanctuary, a room filled with light and rows of books that bore the marks of frequent use. Her mind raced with possibilities. If the key, literal or metaphorical, was hidden there, she had to get inside. As she paced the sidewalk, a voice startled her. "Looking for something?" Ellie turned to see a man in his 60s, bundled in a heavy coat and scarf, his eyes sharp but kind. "I didn't mean to trespass," Ellie said quickly. "I was just visiting." The man smiled faintly. "You must be Margaret Harper's granddaughter. I'm Tom. I live next door." Ellie's heart lifted with hope. "I am. Did you know her well?" "She was a good friend," Tom said, his expression softening. "Used to share her pies with my family. I bought this house when the new owners moved in. Never felt quite right seeing someone else in her place. I was hoping to take a look inside," Ellie admitted. "There's something I need to find, but I didn't want to bother the new owners." Tom hesitated, then motioned for her to follow him. They're away for the holidays. I'm keeping an eye on the place. I can let you in. The library smelled exactly as Ellie remembered. A blend of aged paper, cedar, and the faintest trace of lavender. As she stood among the bookshelves, memories flooded back. Sitting cross-legged on the floor while her grandmother read aloud, her voice carrying the rhythm of the words like music. "What are you looking for?" Tom asked, standing by the door. "I'm not sure," Ellie admitted. "Something connected to Arthur Merritt. Maybe a hidden compartment or a letter." Tom nodded and began inspecting the shelves. Ellie did the same, her fingers brushing over book spines and dusty corners. Then she spotted it. A leather-bound journal tucked behind a row of poetry collections. Carefully, she pulled it out. The cover bore her grandmother's initials, M.H., embossed in gold. Opening it, Ellie found pages filled with meticulous notes. Margaret had written about her favorite books, her daily reflections, and her correspondence with Arthur. One entry stopped Ellie cold. July 15, 1963. Arthur spoke of a snow globe today, one he planned to gift me. He said it symbolized the way small, beautiful moments can be preserved forever. I told him it was a lovely thought, but I never saw it. Perhaps he kept it for another time. Ellie ran her fingers over the words, tears welling in her eyes. The snow globe on her nightstand wasn't just a gift. It was a part of her family's story, tied to a love that had never been fully realized. Near the back of the journal, Ellie found a drawing of a simple map. It marked the wildflower field and a nearby grove of trees. Beneath it, her grandmother had written, "For when the time is right." Ellie left the library clutching the journal, her heart pounding. She thanked Tom and drove straight to the wildflower field. Snow blanketed the ground, but the map had indicated a specific tree in the grove. After nearly an hour of searching, Ellie spotted a large oak with a hollowed-out center. Inside, wrapped in weathered cloth, was a small tin box. Her hands shook as she opened it. Inside was a second letter, this one addressed to Ellie Harper. Asterisk, dearest Ellie, if you're reading this, then perhaps you've followed the trail Arthur and I began many years ago. I always believed that love, whether in friendships, family, or something deeper, has a way of finding its path through time. You are part of that love, Ellie. Arthur saw in me the kindness he wished for in the world, and I see it in you. Take these stories with you, but also know that they are yours to continue. The snow globe you hold is a reminder that even the smallest moments can carry infinite beauty. Cherish them and let them guide you. With all my love, Grandma Margaret. Asterisk, Ellie sat in the snow, tears streaming down her face as the weight of the mystery finally made sense. The snow globe wasn't just a gift. It was a bridge, a way for her grandmother and Arthur to show her that the love they had cherished was still alive, rippling through her own life. And somewhere, whoever had sent the globe and guided her to this moment was waiting for her next step. Ellie returned to her hotel, the letter from her grandmother clutched tightly in her hand. The words resonated deeply, filling her with a sense of both closure and responsibility. The snow globe sat beside her as she replayed the events of the past few days in her mind. The puzzle pieces were aligning, but one question remained. Who had sent the snow globe and orchestrated this journey? The answer had to be close, and Ellie was determined to find it. She glanced at her phone. The cryptic messages had ceased since the previous night, but the sender clearly wasn't done. Whoever it was, they had led her this far and seemed to know her every move. As the snow fell gently outside, Ellie found herself drawn to the snow globe again. She turned it over in her hands, marveling at its craftsmanship. The inscription, "For all the warmth you bring to the world," felt personal now, a reflection of her grandmother's sentiments. Then something struck her. The latch at the base of the globe, the one she'd found earlier, had a second compartment. Ellie hesitated, her pulse quickening, before gently pressing against it. A soft click echoed through the room, and a tiny drawer slid open. Inside was a folded piece of paper, much smaller than the letter she had found earlier. With trembling fingers, Ellie opened it. "Ellie, this is the final step. Meet me at the wildflower field at dawn. Bring the snow globe. A friend." The message was short, but it was enough to set Ellie's heart racing. Tomorrow, she whispered to herself. Whoever this friend was, they had been waiting for this moment as much as she had. The next morning, Ellie bundled herself in her warmest coat and scarf, the snow globe secured in her bag. The air was crisp, the faint light of dawn casting a soft pink hue across the snow-covered landscape. When she arrived at the wildflower field, she saw someone standing near the grove of trees. Her breath hitched as she approached, her boots crunching softly in the snow. The figure turned. A man in his early 30s with dark, thoughtful eyes and a calm demeanor. He smiled gently as Ellie drew closer. "You made it," he said, his voice warm and steady. Ellie blinked in confusion. "Who are you? And why did you send me all of this?" "My name is Nathan," he said, stepping forward. "I'm a historian, and, in a way, a messenger. I've spent years collecting stories like Arthur's and Margaret's, ensuring they aren't forgotten. But this one, your family's story, felt incomplete. I wanted to help you find it." Ellie stared at him, her mind racing. "But how did you know all of this? How did you find the snow globe, the letters?" Nathan's expression softened. "Arthur's belongings ended up in an estate sale after he passed. I bought a collection of his books, journals, and personal items. Among them was the snow globe and a letter he had written but never sent. That letter spoke about Margaret and the life he wished he could have shared with her. It moved me deeply, and I knew it had to be returned to her family. To you." Ellie's eyes welled with tears. "You've been guiding me this whole time?" Nathan nodded. "I thought it might be overwhelming to give you everything at once. I wanted you to experience the journey, just as Arthur and Margaret had. And in doing so, I hoped you'd feel the love and connection they shared." Ellie pulled the snow globe from her bag, holding it up to the soft morning light. "It all started with this," Nathan smiled. "It's more than just a gift. It's a symbol of their story, and now yours." They stood in silence for a moment, the weight of the journey settling between them. "I don't know how to thank you," Ellie said, her voice breaking. Nathan shook his head. "You don't need to. This story belongs to you now. All I ask is that you carry it forward, in whatever way feels right." Ellie nodded, the morning air filling her lungs with a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just uncovering a forgotten story. She was becoming part of it, weaving her own chapter into the legacy of love, kindness, and the enduring beauty of connection. And in that moment, surrounded by the stillness of the field and the quiet hum of history, Ellie knew her life would never be the same. The wildflower field seemed to hold its breath as Ellie and Nathan stood together, their words fading into the crisp morning air. The snow globe felt like an anchor in her hands, tethering her to the legacy of her grandmother and Arthur. A story of love and courage that had transcended time. "I have to ask," Ellie said finally, her voice soft. "Why me? Why now?" Nathan met her gaze, his dark eyes thoughtful. "Because it's your story, Ellie. Arthur and Margaret's connection didn't end with them. Their love for life, for kindness, it lives on in you. When I discovered the snow globe, I knew it wasn't meant to sit on a shelf. It was meant to reach you." Ellie swallowed the lump in her throat, overwhelmed by the weight of his words. "And what now? What do I do with all of this?" "That's up to you," Nathan said. "The snow globe, the letters, the memories. They're pieces of something greater. You can hold on to them as reminders, or you can share them, letting their story inspire others." Ellie spent the rest of the day reflecting on Nathan's words. She returned to her hotel room and laid everything out. The letters, her grandmother's journal, the map, and the snow globe. Each item was a piece of a puzzle that had taken her on a journey of discovery. Not just of her family's past, but of herself. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the town in a golden glow, Ellie made a decision. The next morning, she drove back to Burlington. Her apartment felt different when she walked in, not as empty or quiet as it had before. It felt alive, brimming with the echoes of the people and places that had brought her here. Ellie pulled out her laptop and began to write. At first, the words came slowly, but soon they flowed as though she were channeling the voices of Margaret and Arthur. She wrote about the snow globe, about the letters and the field. She wrote about love, the kind that lingers long after goodbyes. For days, Ellie worked tirelessly, pouring everything she had into the story. And when it was done, she knew exactly what to do next. A week later, Ellie stood at the small Burlington Community Center, her story printed and bound into simple booklets. The center was hosting a holiday gathering, and Ellie had arranged to share the tale with the attendees. The room buzzed with warmth and chatter as families and friends gathered around tables decorated with evergreen garlands and flickering candles. At the front, Ellie stood behind a modest podium, the snow globe resting beside her. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I want to share a story with you tonight. It's a story about love, kindness, and the connections that tie us together, even across generations." As she spoke, the room grew quiet. Ellie recounted the journey that had begun with a mysterious gift and led her to uncover a piece of her family's history. She spoke of Arthur and Margaret, of the snow globe's symbolism, and the legacy of love they had passed down. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. But more than that, Ellie saw tears in the eyes of many and smiles that reflected the hope her story had inspired. Nathan approached her after the event, his face lit with pride. "You did it," he said simply. Ellie smiled, holding the snow globe close. "I couldn't have done it without you. Or without them." Nathan nodded. "What's next for you, Ellie?" She glanced at the snow globe, the glitter inside catching the light like tiny stars. "I don't know," she admitted, "but I think this is just the beginning." And deep down, Ellie felt certain that her journey, like the snow globe's swirling magic, was far from over. Ellie's story spread further than she could have imagined. After the community center event, word traveled through Burlington's tight-knit circles. Soon, local bookstores, libraries, and even a nearby university invited her to share the tale of her grandmother and Arthur. Her small booklet, titled The Snow Globe's Whisper, found a home in shop windows and library shelves, often accompanied by heartfelt messages from readers. People connected with the story, not just because of its mystery and romance, but because it reminded them of their own cherished memories and lost connections. But amidst the excitement, Ellie couldn't shake the feeling that her journey wasn't over. The snow globe remained on her nightstand, a silent reminder of everything she had discovered, and everything still left unanswered. One afternoon, Ellie received an email from a name she didn't recognize: Henry Merritt. The subject line read, "I found something." With a mix of anticipation and nerves, Ellie opened the message. "Ellie, after you left Maine, I went through some of Arthur's belongings I hadn't looked at in years. Among them was a small box labeled Margaret. Inside, I found letters, photos, and a journal he kept during the time he knew your grandmother. One entry stood out. Arthur wrote about a letter he had tried to send Margaret but never did. He mentioned leaving it somewhere he hoped she would find someday, a place they both cherished. I think he was referring to the wildflower field. I don't know if it's still there, but I wanted you to know in case it gives you another piece of their story." Ellie's heart raced. Another letter? She thought she had uncovered everything the field had to offer, but Arthur's journal suggested otherwise. Without hesitation, Ellie called Nathan. "I'm going back to Maine," she told him. "There might be more to find." "I'll come with you," Nathan offered. Ellie hesitated for a moment but then nodded. "I'd like that." The trip to Maine felt different this time, less like a journey into the unknown and more like returning to a place where she belonged. Nathan's steady presence was a comfort, and as they drove, Ellie found herself sharing more about her life, her dreams, her fears, and the profound impact this journey had had on her. When they arrived at the wildflower field, the snow lay untouched, a perfect canvas of white. The grove of trees stood as Ellie remembered, their branches heavy with frost. "Where do we even start?" Nathan asked, glancing around. Ellie held the snow globe tightly, letting her instincts guide her. She walked toward the grove, her boots crunching in the snow. Something about the largest tree, the same one where she had found the tin box, drew her in again. She knelt by its base, brushing away the snow. Her fingers grazed the bark, searching for anything out of place. Then she felt it. A small hollow near the roots, partially hidden by a tangle of branches. Nathan crouched beside her as she reached inside. Her fingers closed around a bundle wrapped in waxed cloth. Carefully, she pulled it out and unwrapped it. Inside was a letter. The paper was fragile but intact, the handwriting unmistakably Arthur's. Ellie unfolded it with care, her breath hitching as she read. Asterisk, my dearest Margaret, if you're reading this, then somehow, fate has allowed my words to reach you. There are things I've kept in my heart for far too long, feelings I should have shared with you in the light of day. You were my compass, Margaret, guiding me toward a better version of myself. I hoped to give you this letter in person, but fear kept me silent. And so, I leave it here in the field where we spent our happiest moments. Know that my love for you was quiet but steadfast, and it lingers still, in the small, beautiful moments I carry with me. I hope you find this and feel the warmth of the memories we shared. Yours always, Arthur. Ellie's tears fell freely as she read, her voice trembling as she shared the words with Nathan. The letter was both a declaration and a farewell, a love preserved in the quiet corners of time, waiting for the right moment to be discovered. Nathan placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. You found it, he said softly. The heart of their story. Ellie nodded, clutching the letter to her chest. It wasn't just Arthur's love for Margaret she felt. It was the legacy of that love, passed down to her, urging her to cherish the connections in her own life. She looked at Nathan, a question forming on her lips. But before she could speak, he smiled. Come on, he said, helping her to her feet. Let's take this story home. And for the first time, Ellie felt ready to do just that. Back in Burlington, the weight of everything Ellie had uncovered felt less like a burden and more like a treasure. The snow globe sat in its usual spot on her nightstand, now a symbol of everything she had learned. About her grandmother, about Arthur, and about the enduring power of love. The letter she had found in the field was the final piece of the puzzle. It spoke not just of Arthur's love for Margaret, but of his hope that their story would inspire others. Ellie realized she had a responsibility to share that hope, not just with strangers but with the people in her life. Days turned into weeks, and Ellie worked tirelessly to expand her booklet, The Snow Globe's Whisper, into a full-length book. Nathan became her closest confidant during the process, offering guidance, encouragement, and an unwavering belief in her vision. As the book neared completion, Nathan invited Ellie to dinner at his favorite restaurant. It was a small, quiet place with fairy lights strung across the windows, the warm glow contrasting with the cold Vermont evening outside. You've come so far, Nathan said as they sat across from each other, his eyes warm with admiration. I don't think I've ever seen someone embrace a story so fully. Ellie smiled, though her cheeks flushed under his gaze. It's not just my story, she said softly. It belongs to my grandmother, to Arthur, to everyone who's ever loved deeply and quietly. But it's also ours, isn't it? Yours and mine. Nathan's expression shifted, a flicker of surprise giving way to something deeper. Ellie, he began, his voice steady but laced with emotion. I've been drawn to this story because of its beauty, but I've stayed because of you. Ellie's heart skipped. She held his gaze, her thoughts swirling with everything they had shared. Before she could respond, Nathan reached across the table, his hand brushing hers. Arthur and Margaret may not have had their moment, Nathan said, his voice barely above a whisper, but maybe we can have ours. As winter gave way to spring, Ellie's book was published, its cover adorned with an image of the snow globe. The launch event was held at a local bookstore, and Ellie was overwhelmed by the turnout. Friends, neighbors, and strangers alike filled the space, their excitement palpable. When it was her turn to speak, Ellie stepped up to the podium, her hands clutching the snow globe. This story began long before I was born, she said, her voice steady. It's a story of love and kindness, of the connections we often take for granted. But it's also a story of courage, the courage to hold onto what matters most and to share it with the world. As she spoke, Ellie's eyes met Nathan's in the crowd. His smile was quiet but sure, a promise of the life they were beginning to build together. That night, as Ellie returned home, she placed the snow globe back on her nightstand. She shook it gently, watching the glitter swirl and settle. For the first time, the world didn't feel so uncertain. She had found her place in the story, a story that would continue to ripple outward, touching lives she could never imagine. Ellie turned off the light and lay down, her heart full of gratitude. Outside, the stars glittered like the snow globe's tiny flecks, each one a reminder that even in the vastness of time, the smallest moments could hold infinite beauty. And somewhere, she knew, Arthur and Margaret's story was still being told. Through her, through Nathan, and through everyone who believed in the quiet magic of love.